Hey climbers, and welcome back to the Treehouse. My name's Ree, and this is the Tarot Tree. And today, on the 25th of March nonetheless, World Tolkien Reading Day, I thought, why not? This has got to be the perfect time to do a little walkthrough and a little deep dive with you guys with my very beloved Lord of the Rings deck. This has been requested recently by Shauna from 6 of Wands, so shout out to you, Shauna. Thank you for that, because I feel like this is a deck that really gets quite a lot of positive comments on my channel, so I don't know why I haven't chosen to showcase it in this way already, as there aren't any really walkthroughs of this independent deck on YouTube as far as I'm aware. So all you Tolkien fans alike and those who are not, hopefully you'll enjoy having this deep dive with me. You know, on this day, if you are a Tolkien fan, take the chance to read away, to watch the movies, indulge in them, some Tolkien fantasy. And if you're not, and you're not familiar with his work, you know, definitely take this as a day and opportunity to give it a go. And why not start by diving into this deck with us? Without further ado, please join me there and back again on a fool's journey through Middle-earth. So we have our provisions. Gandalf has come and herded us up. And I feel like now or never, right? It's our time to set out on our venture across Middle-earth, and who better to start with than a fool of a took. Peregrine Took here, wonderfully illustrating the full energy. So we have the scene here where our very naive, quite troublesome hobbit companion, Peregrine Took, has taken it upon himself. You know, he's seen the shiny kind of scrying ball of Saruman, the stone of Orthanc, a palantiri, which is a kind of indestructible crystal ball, and he's taken a look and very nearly given, you know, Sauron a glimpse into his mind, you know, and almost brought the journey to an end by potentially giving away where Sam and Frodo are, and he gets chastised by Gandalf, as he does many times throughout the story. And I think what a beautiful way to illustrate that full energy, you know, the two sides to it. He's a very risky character because he is quite naive. He has that naivety of the fool, which lends itself well for him, because actually in this kind of passage, although he's done something very foolish by taking the risk and having a look at this ball, instead of revealing the Fellowship's plans, what he's actually got is a glimpse of Sauron's plans, which ends up helping the Fellowship. So that risk paid off for him, but clearly he wasn't thinking. So it's that two-sided coin of the fool, the risk element that can be very rewarding if we take it and we don't think too much about things and we just embrace that sort of naive young energy, but also the element of that being quite foolhardy. Like, what was to happen if he did give away the plans? That's it, Lord of the Rings, the story would have been over. So what a great fool card there. Beautiful imagery. Definitely gives us a lot of food for thought. Next up, illustrating the Magician. With the Lord of the Rings, we have a whole host of people that probably could have been the Magician. I find it really interesting in this deck that the creator chose to use Saruman the White. As you know, he becomes quite a challenging character as things go on, you know, not on the good side. He loses his way. But, you know, we have to give him his props. He has everything going for him at the beginning. He is the most powerful wizard in all of Middle-earth when he is Saruman the White. He has everything available to him. He starts off being quite a well-balanced person, you know, someone that Gandalf comes to seek guidance and counsel from. You know, he's very in touch with nature, the trees, the elements of earth there, the elements of fire, water, air, you know, he has all these things in his reach. But unfortunately, he also kind of depicts, when we have the magician in reverse, like when we lose our faith in our ability to manifest, what happens then? And he kind of falls into a despair, which, unfortunately leads him to choose the dark path, because he kind of doesn't see a way out. He's lost his ability to manifest what he would want. And also that allure of power that I feel like sometimes gets overlooked with the magician, and we kind of attest it to the emperor a lot. The magician is one of the most powerful figures in the major arcana, in my opinion. This is an alchemist. This is someone that can master all 4 elements and create things from them, or out of seemingly nothing. And for a person to get corrupted who has these, which is another kind of aspect of Saruman within the story, it becomes very dangerous. And within our own lives and our own 4 journeys, I feel that we can all kind of fall into that sort of dark side of the magician too, when we fall into ego, being power hungry, not being in balance with the elements, being maybe too in our kind of masculine or kind of fiery aspects of our natures. And I think that's quite illustrated quite well within this story, and I'm glad that this card was chosen to kind of illustrate the magician, because we see him go from this sort of tree loving, very grounded, one with the earth, one with the water, stepping into, I'm creating the Uruk-hai for Sauron now, and destroying the forest with the fire, becoming very destructive. And I feel like this card really gives us all those elements within one character that really speak to the magician. So a beautiful depiction that I wasn't sure of initially, because it puts me off putting what I assume is a negative character with this card, but very worthwhile when you actually bring into him as a all-rounded character, which I like. How could it not be? Now we have the High Priestess energy, and of course this is the wonderful, the beautiful Galadriel. Who else was you going to pick for this? This woman is an ancient elfish royalty. She's been around through all the ages, kind of been there while Sauron was starting to do what he was going to do at the beginning, can peek behind the veil, is clairvoyant, is someone that people within the Middle Earth come and counsel, she gives them counsel. And because she is that kind of all-seeing kind of being, and as beautiful and as kind of good a person she comes across, she's actually quite mysterious and a little bit scary, which I feel like the High Priestess does have that vibe, when we're going into those like third eye elements of ourselves, peeking behind the veil, which the High Priestess speaks to, it can be quite scary. There is something otherworldly about her. Obviously she is an elf, so there's that element too, but she is a very she's a force to be reckoned with. And you might not always think that. You think she's a very angelic person, but she's actually one of the most powerful people in the story. And she's sort of reaching the end of her time on Middle Earth by this story, but she's had a lot kind of, going on for her throughout the ages. It definitely speaks to that energy of the unseen, the unknown, and how kind of empowered we can become when we're willing to kind of sit in that energy. But also she, like I said, she has that sort of kind of mysterious, almost foreboding energy about her too, which I feel like the High Priestess really does have. I love that the moon is kind of painted behind her here too, and her 2 pillars are the trees in her forest. I think that's such a beautiful nod to the imagery of where she would be, because she is like one of the forest elves. I love that for her. Beautiful. Definitely speaks to that High Priestess energy. So next up we have the very, very beautiful Arwen as the Empress. And who else was we going to pick for this? The mothering soul, the woman that's willing to give up, her kind of her own sort of immortality, you know, when she gets to realize, you know, for love, for the want to nurture the person she loves in Aragorn, but also when she sees she's to be a mother in particular. That's quite a turning point for her in this story, or particularly within the films. And a very nurturing person. The first time we come across her is when she comes and saves the day when Frodo is struggling and has been, you know, wounded quite badly. And she comes, she nurtures, she looks after, she creates. She has a beautiful way with the earth, with animals, with herbology and medicine of that kind. You know, how can you not have her as the Empress? Really, she embodies everything that kind of speaks to the Empress, the creator, the nurturer, the kind of lover aspect, the mothering aspect, that the real true divine feminine, and a wonderful counterpart to Aragorn within this story. So yeah, I cannot speak highly enough about her. And we have to have the Emperor. I'm sorry, let's just put these together, because I think it's so beautiful that the artist painted these as a kind of marrying of the two. How wonderful is that? And you see where she's come from, Rivendell, and you see where Aragorn needs to be going back to Minas Tirith there, and the people of Gondor. I think that's really beautiful. So yeah, we won't forget that, because that is what they are counterparts. And to have the Emperor as Aragorn, there is obviously a lot of characters in here that speak to the Emperor and different kind of sides of the Emperor, but I feel like the most balanced definitely has to be Aragorn. Especially this is here when he's actually been made king, so you know, by the end, when he's got through his sort of tumultuous story, you know, of being a reluctant hero, of turning his back on his destiny, you know, but even throughout that and his sort of worries and kind of fears that he may let his people down like his ancestors have, he still remains one of the strongest leaders throughout. You know, he's looked up to. He wants to do what's best by his people and his, you know, companions and the people he deems as family. You know, he doesn't stray even though he's going through his own troubles. He's a very solid character, and that speaks to the Emperor. He's a very decisive person, even though you would feel, you know, he's sort of straying away from his destiny and not wanting to kind of be that king. He really doesn't shy away from making decisions when he needs to throughout this story, which is why I think it's very good that he has been made the Emperor, you know. And I love the fact that within this deck, you know, we have characters that really can help us draw upon the energy of these cards. Because the Emperor in a lot of tarot cards, in a lot of tarot decks, should I say rather, can speak to a lot more of the negative side of the divine masculine, I think, and not like the more, you know, solid protector, builder, you know, of empires in a good way, someone who wants to look after their people, someone who wants to provide for their people, you know, be a guiding light for their people outside of that kind of ego, who is, you know, pragmatic, can stand the test of time, you know. And he is the truest Emperor, I think, that we have within this story. So I'm very glad that he was chosen. But yeah, let me know what you think about that. Is there anyone else within this kind of story you would have chosen instead? And now we have the lovable Gandalf the Grey as the Hierophant. A very interesting take on the Hierophant, and I'm actually quite glad to see him here as the Hierophant. The Hierophant is a card that I struggle with sometimes. We see a lot of the time old age popes, you know, almost, you know, figures we kind of link synonymously to corruption a lot of the time, unfortunately. And the Hierophant definitely does have that corrupting kind of ability within it if we read it in certain ways. But more often than not, it does speak to teachers, you know, spiritual leaders in some way, shape or form. They don't always have to be corrupting, you know, that it speaks to study and learning. And I really like that we have Gandalf the Grey here as the Hierophant rather than Gandalf the White, because this serves two purposes in terms of this study and teacher element of the Hierophant. Gandalf is someone that everyone within the story looks up to. He is the guy that gets everyone together to set off on these journeys. He's respected by many of the inhabitants of Middle-earth, okay, looked upon for counsel. You know, they're devastated when they lose Gandalf the Grey within this story. But he's also, you know, he's still Gandalf the Grey. He's got a lot to learn. He doesn't know everything. You know, he still has that element of needing to learn, study that the Hierophant can speak to, which I think is really cool. He doesn't understand everything about the ring when he first finds it. He has to go off and study and read old scriptures and also seek the counsel of Saruman. So even Gandalf falls into that sort of, you know, that energy of being the student, and also unfortunately kind of getting himself wrapped up in the corruptions of his mentors, and that's a lesson he has to learn. So there's so many layers if you understand Gandalf as a character and his journey in this story that speaks so well to the Hierophant in different ways, I believe, within this deck. So it's really cool that we have him here. It's really cool because he is a bit of a hippie, isn't he? In a way. So he's got that element of, when the Hierophant comes up for me, sometimes it's like, question these structures, okay, and be wise about it. And he definitely does that too. You know, he's going off doing his own thing. He's not quite part of the rest of the wizards. He's a little bit of a, you know, adventurer, shall I say, that they, you know, when he's Gandalf the Grey, some of them, they don't take him too seriously, the more elder wizards. So I find that really cool that we have him there as the Hierophant, the teacher and the eternal student in one, kind of encouraging us to kind of, you know, do the same and also question those in authority and be a little bit of a trailblazer. Okay, now we're on to one of my favourite lovers cards of all time. I'm sure you've been on my channel, you've heard me talk about this card quite a few times by now, but we're going to do it again for those, you know, who have enjoyed it or who haven't seen this before. Here we have the lovers card. Beautifully illustrated as the bromance between Legolas and Gimli. And with many other, as we've already spoke about, depictions of scenes and characters within this deck, it speaks to multiple elements of the cards that is being illustrated here. And that is a huge testament to the wonderful creator of this deck, who I really need to remember his name and mention him at some point. Fix R, I think. Joseph Fix, potentially. Don't quote me on that. I'm really sorry if I've got your name wrong. I will definitely put it in the description. So back to the lovers. Here we speak to the lovers in a bromance. The lovers here, you know, that element of the lovers definitely can denote love, but it doesn't always have to be romantic love. And I think that's a very kind of important to kind of put across with the lovers sometimes. It's multifaceted. Let's not keep it kind of locked down to that. Obviously we all have our own ways of reading cards, so I won't tell you how to kind of view it, but I feel like it's good to kind of look at the lovers card in its sort of expanded kind of in an expanded kind of way. Here we have so much to draw upon. We have the friendship, the soulmate element there. These two definitely have such a strong bond throughout this story. You know, it doesn't start off that way as well, so we have that level of conflict there and coming together despite that, and that speaks a lot to the strength of a lover's card, you know, being within relationships and stuff that are so clearly soulmate energy, that even no matter what kind of controversy or conflict they may be causing, you two are still going to come together, and I think that's a beautiful thing. We have this sort of element, if you don't know if you can see it, I will raise it up a bit, where you can actually see they're from two different races, the Elves and the Dwarfs, who historically do not get on, yet these two have decided, they've made the choice, okay? The Lovers card speaks a lot to choice. The choice to remain friends, companions, you know, the best of friends, you know, comrades in arms. You know, they are the main foundation of the fellowship. And even though we see kind of dwarfs turning their back on one side and elves turning their back on the other side, going their own way, these two are standing the test of time because they've made that choice. And the Lovers card is a card about choice, you know, doing what's right by you, doing what's right by your authentic self, going against the grain sometimes, because it usually harks to an important choice. This is a major arcana card. Okay, it's not quite like a Two of Swords or Two of Pentacles indecision. This is, you know, this is a choice that might really change your life, your path. I see it as that when it comes up for me. And this beautifully illustrates not only that soulmate energy, but that choice energy. There's also another kind of aspect that this speaks to, which is something I always personally see the Lovers card as potentially highlighting too. It's this element of looking to your higher self. Okay, again, that Lovers, that two kind of split element. And here we have a very, you know, grounded underground kind of figure in Gimli, you know, the very earthy kind of, you know, physical, all about the material. They're dwarfs, they love to mine and they love material things, you know, the Taurians, the Taurians of Middle Earth. Okay, they love shiny things. They kind of can become greedy, you know, they don't really have the sort of same spiritual practices, you know, when they lose their way. And then you have the elves highlighting these very ethereal, almost spiritual kind of unhuman figures, angelic almost, especially if you can see like how the light is painted around Legolas here. He does have that radiance. And I see this a lot of the time, sometimes when I'm asking certain questions, as Gimli being the sort of 3D, the sort of human element of ourselves, looking to our higher selves for answers, you know, trying to get in touch. And I feel like the Lovers card definitely can denote this, this look into your higher self, you know, a kind of cue to do that, you know, when it comes up in a reading, like try and tap into that. And I think this card beautifully highlights that as well. It's just so versatile, and this is why it's probably one of my favorite lover cards, if not my favorite Lovers card of all time. Okay, next up, we have the Chariot, and who better to kind of illustrate this than Éomer, the lead of the Riders of Rohan himself. And like, you can't pick anyone better for the Chariot, right? You know, that frenetic energy, that movement, that kind of he's so purposeful, he's impatient, you know, and that's what the Chariot's all about, that fast movement. You know, he's quite a fiery character, and I kind of always link the Chariot a bit to that fire energy, even though it's not part of the minor arcana. I definitely see it in that light. So yeah, who was we going to have other than that? The Chariot is about kind of making your way, having that vision, and this is a man who does, you know, he knows what he wants and he's going for it. It's that drive. He has a lot of drive and purpose and vision, and that speaks to the Chariot so well. We can see the horse is looking exactly the same way he is. He knows where he wants to go, and when we see this card particular, the way it's illustrated here, come up in a read, we know, okay, cool, it's time to be moving forward, right? It's time, you know. He's a character who cannot shake the curse of his uncle at the time, and, you know, has almost had to go against his king, which is something that for a true and loyal person like him is difficult. He ends up getting banished in the end, but he's still so true to his purpose of ridding his lands of orcs and evil, that he will pursue that on his own. And he's such a beautiful and brilliant leader that he has all of his men that come alongside him, you know. The sort of energy of a stampede of horses, right? That really speaks to the Chariot, I think, that really fast energy. And someone who's going places, you know, someone who has direction, you know, knows what they want to do. And I think who better to have as the Chariot than Éomer himself. Strength. A very, very interesting depiction of strength here, and character to be chosen. But in all honesty, who else would you pick in this? You know, we think of strength sometimes, oh, well, who should we have? The most physically strongest character within the story, the most powerful person in the story. Is that who we should have depicting strength here? We have a lot of warriors in here. We have Aragorn, he's a strong person. Gimli is a very tough person. You know, Gandalf is a very strong person, and the way he can withstand so much that happens. But who withstands a lot within the story? Who is the ultimate hero of the Lord of the Rings, it is Frodo himself. And that a lot of that strength is attested to his vulnerability. Let's be real, that's what it's about. It's not just about having that brawn and that power. This is someone who has the sort of willpower within his own self to overcome the kind of temptations of the ring. You know, the courage, the bravery, some may say the naivety. Because this is when he steps forward and says, I will take it, I will be the ring bearer. Okay, what it takes for him to do that, you know. I feel like, depending on your kind of stance with the story, I don't see Frodo as necessarily a naive person when he sets out, in all honesty. You may feel like Frodo is the fool of, you know, the fool of the fool's journey in Lord of the Rings, and in some ways he is, but I actually attest him to be a very intelligent and quite all-round person. Yes, he has to grow throughout the story and he goes through a lot of hardships, so there is some level of naivety and ignorance here because he hasn't ever left the Shire. But I think he does know in some aspects that what he's standing up to do here is gonna be hard, and he's got such a big heart. You know, the strength card speaks a lot to the heart chakra for me. This is a person that sees everyone quarreling and really should be on his way home, has almost died and decides to go. And I think to have him illustrating strength here is such a good character, because these are the kind of traits we need to look into and kind of tap into when we pull this card for ourselves. These are the kind of elements of the strength that get overlooked sometimes. The strength card having that vulnerability, you know, he's so vulnerable throughout the whole kind of story, yet he still keeps going. That is strength. Courage is not the absence of fear, as they say, you know. It's, you know, the willingness to walk through it, and Frodo does that. You know, he does that several times over, you know, through so much jeopardy. And there's many times he wants to turn back, you know. What is that? One of my favourite parts of the Fellowship of the Ring within the movies, where he says, I don't want this, Gandalf. And Gandalf says, yeah, so do all who get to see times like this, but that is not for them to decide, you know. All we have to decide is what we're going to do, the time left to us. And that's such a profound quote. I don't think I got it word for word there, so sorry for the major fans. But, you know, this is someone who shows immense courage. And that is what strength is about. It's not the absence of fear. It's not about brawn. It's not about power. It's about embracing our vulnerabilities and stepping forward anyway. And Frodo is the best character to highlight that, in my opinion. And that's why I love that he's been used in this deck. So next up we have the lovely Hermit, and who better to be than Treebeard himself, the most ancient, the most slowest, the most philosophical character within the whole of the sort of Middle Earth kind of ensemble. Beautifully illustrated here. I find this depiction quite funny actually. He's just there rooted, holding his little lantern like we usually do see within the Hermit. What can I say about that? This is a man that takes his time, a man or ent rather, he takes his time, you know. He's living in a whole different kind of time zone to anyone else, which really frustrates the other characters around him, but can kind of encourage us to kind of change our pace of life. What the Hermit is all about, is that change of pace, that taking that time to mull things over. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's worked out for him in the past. That's why he does it. And like I said, time doesn't run in the same way for him. But his character, like, again, we have another sort of dual aspect of these scenes and characters picked in this deck that I love. There's always a danger of staying in the Hermit energy for too long, okay? So when this can come up in reverse, we can kind of see that element, or when we feel that kind of energy from it when we pull it. Have we stayed here too long? Because this kind of character, Treebeard, he's mulling it over for far too long, and he kind of talks himself out of getting involved. He kind of says, it's not my issue. He's almost become too removed from life, which can be a hazard when when you do reach them kind of hermit phases, I'm sure we've all had them at times when we maybe become a bit too insular, and that's not what life's about. Life has to, you know, has to have a good balance of solace and experience. You know, without experience, we cannot make the best of solace, because there will be nothing, you know, of merit to reflect upon and philosophize about. You know, we need that balance, and we need to know when to come out of that hermit phase. And he's taken himself out of the world, and, you know, he really freaks Mary out. He's like, but you're part of this world, he goes. And he's like, farmer Bristolian accent that I absolutely love. And you know, you have to get involved, and it's only when he sort of gets a kind of slap round the face that he decides to come out of that hermit and actually makes a big difference. And that's really interesting. You know, that's something we always need to be aware of with that hermit energy. Take that time to reflect, to contemplate, to have solid. Sometimes we need that. Sometimes that really gains insights for us, but other times it can be very stifling and not very good. And Treebeard speaks to both. Now, it's such a simple depiction of the Wheel of Fortune, and I love it. It's a plainer card, I know, but, you know, the ring of power is the Wheel of Fortune here. And of course, what else would you pick? You know, it's the ring, you know, which is, you know, that circular wheel energy that we have anyway. Here we have our little ring too. But what does the ring do in Middle Earth? It changes people's fortunes, right? You know, when Isildur loses it, he's you know, he gets killed. When Gollum finds it, you know, arguably his fortune is a bit a bit out of luck for him, but, you know, he lives for a long time. You know, right now is the battle between who's going to get it. You know, if Sauron gets it, that's it. It's a bad fortune for everyone. And if the Fellowship can do what they want to do with it, then, you know, sorry orcs, it's time to go. You know, it's all about changing people's fortune, the ring. And you know, it's such the main player within the story, hence the Lord of the Rings. Whoever has that ability to kind of master that ring changes things in the way that they would like. But what I also like about this nod to the ring is that is the issue about the whole the issue throughout the whole story. People believing that they can be in control of this time, they can be in control of that fate, they can be in control of that change. Now, the Wheel of Fortune for me within the major arcana really speaks to more of like divine timing and sort of element of that change is going to come, you know, and it's not necessarily going to be on your terms, or that change is coming, and whether you want it or not, you better get ready. Do you know what I mean? And that is the ring. You know, the ring has its own power. The ring almost is that sort of other within the story, that sort of, you know, kind of player that's creating, you know, these chances. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing, it's always got its own agenda. You know, we get told that throughout the story. The ring decides what it wants to do. Once again, it betrays, you know, it betrays Sauron at times by leaving him, it betrays Gollum by leaving him. These are all people that looked after it, you know, treasured it, you know. And that's sort of how fate and time and destiny and, you know, spiritual kind of whoever we have up there doing what they're doing, that's how it works sometimes. You know, that's how the universe works. It's mysterious and things happen that are not within our control. And also, the Wheel of Fortune does speak to things usually are not becoming better for us, you know. And I guess whoever gets the ring and does what they want with it in the story, you know, it's going to be better for them if they have it. So, you know, either because they believe it's going to give them power, or they believe that they can get rid of it and rid themselves of evil. So yeah, I think it's a simple but very interesting take on the Wheel of Fortune there. Right, next up, we have King Theoden himself. Luckily, when he's kind of got his marbles about him again, it hasn't been poisoned by Saruman and Grima Wormtongue. And he is justice. And I like that, because I kind of sometimes have an issue with the justice card. I have to be honest. Like, when I see it, sometimes I struggle with it a little bit. Is it about getting balance, getting what's owed to you? Not owed, I don't know if I like that word, but you know what I mean. Something's going to go in your favor, And he is quite a just person, you know, even though he's been through a lot. When he has the opportunity to kill Rimmer Wormtongue, you know, with Aragorn's counsel partly, he spares him because he is a just man and he understands that he's also lost his way, Wormtongue has, and he doesn't want his blood on his hands, any more blood on his hands. You know, he's seen lots of his people die. He sort of is that fair sort of judge and juror character. But he even he can sometimes lose his way in some aspects, you know. But I do like that element of fairness that he brings as a character, which kind of speaks to the justice card for me. Like, you are going to get your just desserts, you know, hold on, hold out. Also a kind of nod to embody these sort of aspects in ourselves. I do see that when the justice card comes out sometimes too. That's a personal thing for me. Also, you know, he has those victories. He's a character that has those victories despite hardships within the story, which I think is a very encouraging element to have on our justice cards, because sometimes, you know, when we pull this card, I feel it's, you know, it's a major arcana card, and I feel like in readings it can come up, you know, as a kind of encouragement to help us through tough times. Like, we will get where we want to be in time, and he does manage to save his people, you know, even though the odds are against him several times, you know. And even though he loses his life by the end, he's sort of, you know, what he's wanted to achieve, he's achieved, per se, if you get what I mean by that. You know, justice is served, you got to live out your life purpose, and, you know, you wasn't left to just rot and be cursed. You kind of were a big part of, you know, switching the fates of Middle-earth to, you know, to men, and them being victorious. He does have as well, in some aspects, you know, he speaks to that energy, you know, he doesn't want Arwen, his niece, in harm's way. So that's that sort of, you would think, oh, there's that unfairness, like that kind of opposite of justice, but it's not coming from a horrible place. So there's that element too, if we wanted to have this as a card that was coming up in reverse, partly, but I think he more speaks to the positive attributes of the Justice card. So yeah, that's our lovely King Theoden. Now, what a wonderful depiction for the Hanged Man. This is Faramir, you know, Faramir, Boromir's younger brother, who, you know, right here is in a suspended state where he's actually unconscious, believe it or not, because he's tried to basically, you know, please his father, kind of gone on a sort of suicide mission. His father believes he's died through this. He hasn't. He's just unconscious, and, you know, his crazed father throws him onto a funeral pyre and sets him alight. But he is not dead, so he's in this suspended state of being unconscious, which I really think speaks to the Hanged Man in an interesting way, because when we are on pause in our own lives, you know, this is quite, you know, a physical, but again, metaphorical kind of representation of like what that can be like. You know, you're not living your life, but you're not like, you know, when you're on pause, maybe you're on a hangman moment, you're not living your life in the way maybe you would have before, but you're not, you know, you're not dead. You know, you're there, you're having this moment, but it also speaks to the dangers of staying in the hanged man state for too long, because if he doesn't wake up, you know, we don't wake up from this sort of trying to find another perspective or being on pause, for example, in our lives, whichever way that may take or form that may take, you know, these fires are encroaching on him. Life goes on, you know, it goes on, whether we're participating or not, right? So there's that kind of call as well to, okay, take your time, you know, the hangman tells us to take those pauses, but don't stay there for too long, you know. Don't let the blood rush to your head for too long to daze you, or, you know, stay in that sort of stagnant state, because life is about movement and life is about living also. And luckily he doesn't burn alive there, so you'll be glad to know, I'm sure a lot of you already know that. Okay, next up we have Death. what an interesting depiction of death. There is a lot of choices that could have been made for this card, I believe, from this story, but a very poignant one has been chosen here. And I also like that there's several different characters and scenes going on outside of this main one here, which we'll dive into. So this is, a very profound and very sad moment within the Fellowship of the Ring, the movie and the story. This is where Boromir, having redeemed himself after being tempted by the ring and clearing Frodo, saves, in a way, Merry and Pippin, or tries to protect them. Unfortunately, they get kidnapped, but, he sacrifices himself in doing so, and he's dying, and Aragorn comes and finds him. And death, to have a death literally illustrating the death card within this deck is very interesting. Usually we will see maybe like a kind of Grim Reaper kind of character, kind of embodying death, to kind of talk about, that being taken somewhere else, the ending of something, the transformation. But here we have a poignant scene where the original fellowship is ending. We're losing a big player in that, someone who was a friend. There is the element of loss, and I think sometimes we gloss over that with the death card, as in, oh, it's all positive, it's all transformation, it's all great. But with transformation and change, there can come a lot of grief, whether that is physical, like a death of a person, an ego death, a big change in life. It's difficult, But there's that nod here. We have Frodo and Sam running off as they're going to kind of go their own way. We have, the other players in the game, like the orcs, are still around here, like kind of closing in. But there's that nod to, oh, we have, these are the orcs. This is Legolas and Gimli here. Okay, we have Frodo and Sam that are about to go on. This is the part of the story where everything changes, everyone splits up. It's not the fellowship we kind of were promised at the start. And it has to be that way, the story has to go on, the journey has to go on. Frodo and Sam have to go their own ways, as much as we may want to stay in something, sometimes things happen and we have to go on, deaths happen in life, change happens in life, and we have to be willing to move and transform with it. And I love that this death card highlights all of that, It highlights the grief, but also highlights the kind of aspect of needing to move forward. You have to keep going. You have to embrace this transformation. And who knows, if this hadn't happened, this fork in this road, this kind of change of fate, this change of destiny, maybe maybe the ring would never have been destroyed. If Aragorn had stayed with Sam and Frodo, if there was that many people kind of traveling around, would Gollum have been able to be kind of caught in the way that he was by Sam and Frodo? Would he have befriended them in the way he would have? I don't think he would have. And he is a very important part of the story by the end. He is the person that effectively destroys the ring. So many fates would be changed. And Aragorn wouldn't have been able to fulfill his destiny. Legolas and Gimli might not have been able to kind of forge the alliance that they did. So there's that nod to, don't be afraid of death. Yes, it might not have gone the way you wanted. Maybe you didn't want this change, but you can carry on and find something good and potentially better, and a better outcome down the line nevertheless. Next up, we have Temperance, and one of the best characters in the whole of the Lord of the Rings for me, and that is Mr. Samwise Gamgee. And what a great person to have a Temperance, right? I don't think there's anyone in this story that kind of is as tried and true, who kind of keeps his shit together as much as Sam does. He's such a grounding force for Frodo, okay, within this story. And that's what Temperance is about, tempering your emotions, being able to kind of deal with everything that's going on. And I doubt that Frodo would have got as far as he did without Sam being there, being that support kind of support network and a beautiful friend. And that's what Temperance is all about, you know, having that balance. And I like the fact that he's like a gardener and a cook, and that he has his cauldron here and he's cooking, and that's really cool. Because we always also see Temperance a lot with a figure kind of, you know, pouring water and stuff. But I think a cook or a chef really speaks to Temperance too as well. Like, you have to cook something just right. You have to add the right amount of ingredients, right? And I really like that. It's quite funny as well, because we all know Gollum hates the taste of Sam's cooking, but he's actually meant to be a quite good cook in the books, to be believed. So, yeah. I really like him as a Temperance character. He does speak to that balancing of energies, kind of being that grounding force. Yeah, he has his moments where he loses it, but he always gets his stuff back together, you know. He kind of gets pushed away and kind of decides, that's it, I've had enough. Like, we all have those moments. We're not all completely well-balanced people all the time, but it's about what we do when we find ourselves in them situations to get back to that balanced state. And to emotionally regulate. And I think Sam really speaks to that energy very well. So he's a good person to have there to help act as a reminder when we get this card. What would Sam do? Make potatoes, probably. But yeah. Okay, well, we wasn't going to have anyone else in this but Sauron as the devil, right? You just couldn't. He embodies that devil energy so wholeheartedly that, you know, I mean, that evil aspect of the devil, you know, we don't have to go that far, but, you know, evil does come within the devil, right? It's spelt in there. But more so than that, his character speaks to everything, you know, that the devil speaks to. This wanting to control people, you know, the sort of corruption of kind of having power, attachment, ego, you know, all these elements that come within the devil. Okay, that is what Sauron is. He embodies that sort of shadowiness of the devil, you know. What are you going to do? Are you going to break free from these attachments? Are you going to be like the Fellowship and you're going to oppose me? Or are you going to, you know, fall into the kind of addictions and kind of like evil and despair like Saruman does in the end? That sort of fall into the ego element, you know, that alluring, like kind of promising people power, you know. That's what he did when he gave everyone rings. He tricked them. It's that trickery element of the devil as well. Like, you need to look beyond what you're being promised sometimes. You need to look beyond your attachments or your drive sometimes and actually see, are they coming from a good place, you know, because he has that about him as well, you know. He will cut you down. He has the sword in his hand here. You know, this is someone trying to control the truth, you know. The devil can speak to characters like that in our lives, you know, narcissistic kind of people, potentially egomaniacs, megalomaniacs, you know. This is someone who wants to control, and all the things in life that want to control us, and we need to kind of look into them, you know. And I think having such a strong character and a confronting character to highlight the devil in this deck is really good, because that's what we need when we see the devil. It's not a card to sort of like, you know, for us to be like, oh yeah, it's just like the little devil, you know, oh, he's cute. It's like, oh no, oh, these shadowy aspects. And I like that it has all this shadow kind of aspect behind him too. Confront them, okay? Find your truths with the sword here. Don't be kind of bound by this, like with the chain and stuff. Don't be bound by that devil energy, because it's not what's best for you. You know, what he wants is not what's best for the inhabitants of Middle Earth, is it? It's what's best for him. And even all of his minions, like the orcs, don't really have much say in it, do they? He doesn't even really treat them well. So yeah. Okay, the tower. Okay, of course we're gonna have Sauron's tower. It couldn't be anyone else. Barad-dûr. What can I say? Of course they had to use this just because physically it is a tower. But also what it speaks to while it's up, And when it falls down is very interesting. It speaks to that tower energy, okay, that foundation. Right now, he's very weak, Sauron. You know, he's just this eye on this tower, who has this vision where he feels he can bring himself back into the kind of material world. And yes, he's foreboding. Yes, he seems like a very kind of like strong presence, but actually he's very weak. And sometimes that's what we need to look at in terms of our lives, in our own towers, like these things that we are kind of upholding. Are they good for us anymore? Are the foundations strong, you know? Or shall we just pull them down? And, you know, the Fellowship here, they decide that's it. That's not what they want. We don't want his Middle Earth. It's not good for us. It doesn't serve us. And you know what? He's weak now. It's, you know, let's take him down. And that's what they do. You know, that tower has to fall, because it's just, you know, it's a false kind of narrative. And I love that at the end, you know. It's that the Fellowship just stand for that overcoming your fear, and he kind of represents fear a lot symbolically for me, especially with the eye, the all-seeing eye, like staring into your soul, kind of watching over you from this watchtower. But when you see that last kind of scene or read it, you know, the tower, he's got his eye on trying to control people so much, he hasn't realized that, you know, the one little thing keeping him around is this tiny bit of metal is, you know, melting in the volcano as he kind of tries to, you know, take his last stand, and he crumbles, and you see it for what it is, you know, just our own perception. You know, there's a perception of power, and I think that's what the tower speaks to a lot. We think of it as like such solid thing, the tower, but is it solid? So yeah, I love that. I love that the tower is his tower, and also kind of gives it a bit of comfort, like don't be scared of this tower moment, because obviously it's good for this tower with the Lord of the Rings to fall down, so it may be good for our towers to fall down too, right? Next up we have the star. Okay, an interesting one, a bit more difficult to understand if you're not familiar with the books and just of the films of the Lord of the Rings. This threw me a little bit when I first saw this. But this actually refers to a scene where Legolas brings down one of the Nazgûl in the pitch black at night, brings down one of their winged beasts to kind of save the day, and sort of offered that hope for the journey to continue. And that really speaks to the star's energy of that hope, that, you know, continuation after a tower moment. I think it's so beautiful and actually quite sweet that it's almost as though he's shooting a star into the sky with that shooting star energy. I really do like that. So really speaking to that kind of star energy there, you know, Legolas is that star, he's that hope, you know, and he is quite an ethereal being an elf also, with his like long golden locks. But I like that. I speak to that journeying on, that hope that the star gives us after the tower. So yeah, very interesting. Also could be a nod to healing with him being a kind of elf as well, but that might be a reach. Next up, beautiful moon card. Very clever, this one. So let's dive into this. This is a beautiful Arwen, you know, kind of princess of Rohan, as it were. Really like that she is the person that's representing the moon here. This defiance in her, she is that divine feminine, but she's strong. You know, she wants to fight with the men, she wants to be alongside them, and I like that we're kind of seeing those strong traits of the divine feminine, like they're not just to be turned away, you know, and that kind of speaks to the moon. But also the fact that she's the person that conceals her identity, that also speaks to the moon energy, you know, that kind of illusion, and no one knows who she is, that kind of facade, you know, and I think that's so cool. There's so many elements to draw upon here. Facing your fears also, you know, with the sword there, that's what the moon can definitely be about, facing fears, and she definitely does that, you know. She prevails in the end by facing those fears. She accomplishes what no man could do. She kills the Witch King of I can't pronounce it, but you know what I mean, Pan. So beautiful person to have for the moon. and the sun. Now, I wasn't sure who this was initially when I first saw this card, but this is actually Merry, which I think is so sweet that we've chosen the most joyful card, and we've chosen the character with the name Merry. And he is known for being, being quite merry. He's an optimist at heart in this tale. He doesn't give up. He keeps trying to kind of convince Treebeard to get on board and help. He definitely has a lot of Leo energy about him now, come to think about it, which is something I also associate with the sun. He loves to party. He's like the happy-go-lucky one also. He seems a bit out of place in the story at times, but really matures and comes into his own. And he's just that reminder that you can bring joy into even the most kind of futile of times, and that's what he brings. He brings that sort of comedic element, that sort of lightheartedness to a tale that's actually quite dark, and that's what the sun energy speaks to, and I like that. Judgment. I love this card for Judgment. It's so simple, but oh my goodness, it's a bit emotional for me, because this scene, this is where the elves are going off into the Undying Lands. They're leaving Earth. They're basically, going on to the next kind of realm for them. Which what is Judgment? That's that you're evolving and going to the next plane, right? And obviously it's sort of a analogy for death, in many ways. And I just love the song by Annie Lennox that goes along with this scene for me. What can you see on the horizons? That's what Judgment is about. It's about, we've gone through all these trials and tribulations, and like the elves they've helped everyone, and they've managed to help save Middle Earth, and they're handing it over to the humans now. It's the age of man. It's time for us to go. And that's what we need to face when we get to the Judgment card. That's what it speaks to, and being willing to move on, being able to accept that, the journey has come to an end now. We need to go and move on to the next thing. We've passed the tests, as it were. And I think that's such a beautiful card, that kind of helps us feel more serene and kind of accepting in that, because Judgment cards can be a bit confronting for me sometimes. The original Rider-Waite, you have this sort of trumpets being horned, people sometimes in coffins looking up like, oh, we're about to be judged, are we going to heaven or hell? And that can be a bit foreboding. So this is a lot more of a serene energy, and I appreciate that in this deck. Okay, next up we have the world, and what better way to illustrate this than just a map of Middle Earth itself. What does the world speak to? Whole new adventures, right? Gandalf coming along for the next one, bringing you a map and saying, okay, where haven't we been yet? That's what the world is about, completion. You kind of met your judgment, you've moved on, and now it's like, okay, that's it, we've elevated on to the next, right? After that judgment, you've passed the test, it's time to go on to the next adventure now, the next cycle. Come and join us, there's so much more to see. And I like this because it's given us that encouragement, that sort of kind of push to adventure. Whenever I see a map, that's what I think of, explorers, and that's what we should think of when we see the world card. I think it's a good way to look at it, rather than maybe being a bit intimidated and scared of cycles and phases of life and seasons of life coming to an end. It's like, look what we've got out there for us, let's carry on. So that's really cool. Next, the Ace of Cups. Beautiful. This is the Vial of Galadriel, for those of you that are familiar. It sort of gives Frodo the light in dark places. That's what Galadriel says to him. May it help you find the light when all other lights have gone out. And that is what the Ace of Cups is about. It's an opportunity, an opportunity for love and light, bringing that into our lives again, even when things might have been hard. Because aces come up to give us that encouragement, right? They're like, here's your new beginning, we're offering you this kind of, the hands always come up in cups, in ace cards, and I love that. And I love that that's something from the Rider-Waite Smith that continues into a lot of systems. I think it's important. It is almost like the universe giving you a hand, or in this case Galadriel giving you a hand. Take it, that it's here and it's going to help you if you're willing to use it. So that's a really beautiful kind of message for the Ace of Cups. Here we have the Two of Cups, which is the union of Arwen and Aragorn. This is where they're meeting, you know, on the kind of bridge. This is when, you know, their love is forming, and they're such a beautiful love story. You know, they spend a lot of time in separation throughout their lives, but their love is so strong, and that's what the Two of Cups speaks to a lot. You know, that sort of undying kind of soulmate love. And I really like that, you know, I really like that energy, that nothing's really coming between them, even though so much is sort of against them. They're still there, it's strong. That soulmate energy, like we get with the lovers, is apparent here, but it's more in the romantic aspect, you know, it's definitely leaning to that with the Two of Cups. And I'm glad that we have them highlighting this here. Beautiful, beautiful imagery here as well. The Three of Cups. This is really cool. We definitely get a very Rider-Waite kind of celebration here. This is just the women of Middle-earth celebrating, literally. That's what we've got going on here. I guess we maybe could have chose different scene here. You know, there are a few celebratory scenes in the Lord of the Rings, maybe at Bilbo's party at the beginning, for example, of the films. But, you know, we get that energy here, that sort of friendship, coming together, having a good time, you know, pouring our kind of love into everyone's cups, that sort of balanced friendship energy. And I like that females are used to kind of embody this as well within this deck, you know, giving the nod to that sort of sisterhood. Next up, I love this one, the Four of Cups, right? Who we got here but old Bilbo himself. And I really love that it's using him, you know, he's become disillusioned with the Shire in this scene, right, which really speaks to the Four of Cups. It can sometimes mean being disillusioned, being bored, not being happy where you're at, you know. He has all these home comforts in his kind of little hobbit hole, but he's looking out the window wanting more, you know, like when he's saying to Gandalf, I want adventure, Gandalf, you know. He's had a taste of it, you know, with that map of the world, and he's not kind of settling back into living in the Shire anymore. He needs to go. And I think it's important that we get that message across with the Four of Cups. It also harks as well a little, because the Four of Cups can mean sometimes we're missing out what we have in some aspects. I know that we might even think more of that as the Five of Cups potentially, but I do feel like sometimes he is a bit like forgetting that he has Frodo and a lot of love there, but if it's not his place, it's not his place. And the Four of Cups can definitely give us a push to be like, you're not happy where you're at, you're despondent, let's keep it moving. So that definitely highlights that. Next up, a very hard-hitting Five of Cups. What can we say about this? This is obviously when the Fellowship are grieving the loss of Gandalf, you know, Gandalf the Grey, when he's fighting the Balrog and just says, fly, you fools! And they all have to be picked up and, you know, encouraged to go on their journey. But this is where they're literally despairing. And that is what the Five of Cups can be about sometimes, when you are in them moments where you can't see a way forward. You're looking at those spilled cups, those 3 spilled cups, and it's very hard to pick yourself up in those moments. And it was very hard for the characters, you know, the hobbits here, you know, the Fellowship, to pick themselves up. But we have to go on, and luckily in this scene we have that reminder in Aragorn, you know, pick them up, we have to move forward, you know. Five of Cups enables us to try and embody that sort of Aragorn energy as well. There's not all hope is not lost, okay. We have to go and move forward. Better things are still to come. As you can see, the 2 cups are still standing in this, you know, nod to that. We have to move forward. Beautiful card, beautiful scene. Okay. Okay. 6 of Cups. This is where we have the Bilbo Baggins. Okay, I see why they chose it for this scene instead of the 3 of Cups. It could have been for both, but yeah. Celebration, being all around your family, that sort of sentimental energy as well when we're having birthday parties with family, you know, in the village. It's just celebration, right? Kind of that give and take, everybody sharing. Definitely speaks to that 6 of Cups energy. I like that a lot. It's my 111th birthday. I like that. It's nostalgic for us within this deck as well, because obviously this is before, you know, everything kind of gets quite tumultuous. This is that last sort of haven of being the comfort of the Shire. And yeah, it's good to remember that energy in our life sometimes, you know, that sort of homely energy. Ooh, excuse my stomach if you can hear that. It's making so many noises. Unbelievable. Right, what have we got here? Okay, we have the Seven of Cups now. And this is really interesting. This is the mirror of Galadriel. Okay, and what do we get with the Seven of Cups energy? It's always like a lot of choices, potentials that can happen. Okay, and, you know, we know that Galadriel, she has that sort of clairvoyance ability to a degree. She can kind of look into the future and kind of see what's going to happen to a degree, but it's not set in stone. You know, there's many kind of paths that can be chosen. You know, not everything is completely fated, and I like that. We have that sort of nice, almost like a witchy element in this card, but also that sort of kind of nod to them choices, those pathways in life, which the Seven of Cups definitely speaks to. And it can be quite murky, you know, like that can sometimes cause like quite a lot of confusion here, you know, especially when we're looking in waters and they can be distorted. I like that sort of energy of her kind of scrying kind of bowl in that regard too. So yeah, definitely does speak to that energy. Here we have the Eight of Cups. I like this one a lot as well. This is basically after Gollum's betrayal. You know, poor Sam has been sent on his way because apparently he's stolen the lembas bread, and Gollum's got his little trickster ways in and convinced Frodo that Sam is not a good person to have around. And this kind of talks to Sam basically, you know, having to walk away from his best friend, you know. And vice versa, Frodo doing the same. They're both sort of in that Eight of Cups kind of energy here, walking away from one another, you know, thinking, okay, I'm going to have to go on to better now. For Frodo, he's thinking, I'm getting rid of someone who's betrayed me potentially, and I have to keep moving forward. And for Sam, it's very much the same energy, like, you know, I've given everything to this, I can't do any more now, like I've tried my best. Thankfully, he turns back round, but you know, the Eight of Cups is them big choices. You know, I see it as quite a poignant card, even though it's in the minors. For me, strong energy comes up for me a lot when I'm really struggling to let go of things, and you know, it really does speak to that energy. It really does. It also speaks to the energy of not being able to let go of things as well, I guess. But as Sam goes back, but maybe sometimes there's choices that we need, you know. We choose and we choose again, as a Crystal the Oracle, a great kind of page on Instagram if you're interested in sort of self-development and spirituality, says, you know, it's okay to make choices and choose again. You know, that's what the Eight of Cups is. We make a choice, you know, in the belief that we're going to move on to something better, but it's always okay to potentially change our minds. Right, next up, Nine of Cups. We have the wonderful Barlam and Butterburn. He's in. This is such a funny character. I really do like him, you know, when they arrive, the prancing pony, and he's looking down. This is the scene where he's like, oh, they're hobbits, you know. I like that he's the Nine of Cups. I understand it. I get why they've chosen him, you know. He's sort of this hub of, you know, kind of that sort of content, you know. It's like on the journey forward. It's one of the last sort of places, well, before the ringwraiths come, you know, that they have that bit of solace, that bit of fun, you know. He's a businessman that's got his business, you know, underway, got everything he needs. There's quite comfortable, you know, quite happy doing what he's doing, and that speaks to the Nine of Cups energy. I think I do think it speaks to that. The Ten of Cups, wonderful card. This definitely speaks to that family, that kind of having everything you wanted, you know. This is the scene of Arwen and Aragorn living happily together with their son. I think, well, that's obviously the sort of premonition she has that kind of leads her to make different choices, and thankfully the right ones, because she sees this down the line, and this is what she gets down the line. It's beautiful because this is what you want for them, you know. You want this for that couple, even through all their hardships, and this is what we want for ourselves. When we see the Ten of Cups and we know of that family energy, that family unit, that loving energy, you know, it's nice to have reminders that we will have this coming our way. I really like that. They're a beautiful scene for that. Oh, this Page of Cups really gets me, and it speaks to the Page of Cups energy in a few different ways. This is where Faramir comes to his father, and you know, he's had bad news. He's the messenger. We have that messenger element with the pages here. He's trying to lovingly deliver a message, you know, a hard message, that his brother is dead, and that he's learned of Boromir's death, and it doesn't go down well. He's always been a person who doesn't feel like he's good enough for his father, being the youngest son, not being as so-called successful or as experienced as his brother, who arguably could be a knight in this in this deck, I think. And he's coming with his card, with his cup, knowing he might not have everything to offer, but he's coming willingly with love anyway. And that's what the Page of Cups speaks to a lot of the time. Sometimes it's someone who feels they don't have enough, if it's a character in our life, but they're coming anyway, you know, with their heart on their sleeve. They might not be experienced, but they're coming anyway, and they're trying to take that opportunity. It's a very interesting scene between father and son to pick for the page, especially the Page of Cups, and I think it speaks to that energy very well. Now, next up we have the Knight of Cups. And this is Arwen. This is Arwen as she offers her pendant to Aragorn. Okay, her even star pendant, which is a symbol of, you know, her eternal life, basically. And she gives this to him. It's a very important kind of heirloom and important belonging to her. And for her to give it away really speaks to that sort of, you know, those gestures that Knight of Cups do, very big, bold, romantic kind of gestures full of love. I think it's really interesting to have a female as the Knight of Cups in this. You know, usually we can think of Knights of Cups sometimes, well, for me, like this sort of Casanova kind of energy. But, you know, there is that element of just really giving something away, and maybe it's foolhardy. I think that is the kind of aspect there. Sometimes you can think of the Knights of Cups as a bit like that, you know, those foolhardy romantics, and arguably you could say that about her. Like, why are you giving this away to someone who could very well be going to his death, as her father keeps trying to tell her, but she's staying tried and true to it, you know. Obviously she has some sort of moments that you might deem as fickle, which sometimes we can see the Knight of Cups as being fickle, I think, in terms of, you know, she decides at one point she may leave, but then she goes back on that, right? She stays tried and true. So she has all the promise of becoming a Queen or King of Cups, and I like that. On to the actual Queen of Cups. This is a very interesting character, and she's not going to be familiar to those who've only seen the films. This is Celebrian. So I think it's worth mentioning, when we move into the court cards of this deck, they can be a bit tricky. For me, court cards in general with any tarot deck can be a bit tricky sometimes. But this is kind of especially true if we're not familiar with all of the characters within this story from the book, because this is a character. This is Celebrian. This is Elrond's wife, and she is in the book. She doesn't appear in the film, and she also doesn't appear in the book very much, so there's not much known about her. So it's kind of interesting she's picked as the Queen of Cups. I think she's picked because she is a counterpart to Elrond, who we'll see as is been chosen for the King of Cups. Now, what we do know about her is that, you know, she's a mother. She is Arwen's mother. She's actually Galadriel's daughter as well, believe it or not. So yeah, there's that kind of link between characters there too. And she's also described as quite a sensitive person. You know, unfortunately, she kind of gets taken and tortured by orcs at one point, and never fully heals from that. And I think the Queen of Cups can be a very sensitive, kind of emotional kind of person. It does speak to that energy, the mothering energy, also the nurturing energy that she definitely had for, you know, bringing up her daughter, who seems quite well balanced. So she does speak to that if you do know her. But like I said, not much is known about her within the Tolkien realm. So I feel like in this deck she was kind of chosen just because she's the queen counterpart to Elrond. But yeah, we get some hits and misses, guys, sometimes. So yeah, on to King of Cups, we have Elrond himself. definitely speaks to the King of Cups energy, I believe. You know, a very balanced individual in terms of his emotions, has mastered them, is sort of a master of healers. You know, he is a healer. This is how Arwen has learned everything she needs to know, as well as someone who will march into battle and be loyal to his friends. You know, a very loyal person, you know, but quite an emotional person. We see like him, even though as balanced as he can be, when he goes out of balance, you know, especially when it's surrounding things like his family. He's a very family orientated person, you know. He's you know, he's a very big-hearted person, which I think speaks to the King of Cups character very well. You know, he's very protective like that, but he definitely tries to see it from his daughter's side eventually. You know, he hopes for the best, he likes Aragorn, etc., but he has his fears. And, you know, Kings of Cups, when they become out of balance, you know, they can get a little bit kind of wary in that way. You know, they've got big hearts, but, you know, and even if we have mastered them, you can't be like that all the time. So yeah, I think he definitely is the right character for that kind of court card within this deck. Next we have the Ace of Coins, and this is like a bit interesting at the beginning if you're not familiar with certain things in the book. This is actually the nut of the melon tree, okay? And what that means is, you know, it's the start, right? It's the seed. Like, this is how we start growing. You know, this is where it all begins. These are the nuts that create some of the biggest trees in the Middle Earth, you know. And it's said that Galadriel, she took these the nuts of the melon tree and planted them, and that's what became Lothlorien. When we see those massive trees, you know, when the Fellowship arrive at Lothlorien, you know, this is their humble beginning, and it's that promise that, you know, from this we can grow something, we can grow a community, we can grow these humongous trees, we can grow, you know, from this opportunity here. And that's what the Ace of Coins is all about. That's them sort of opportunities within the material, you know, to grow. You know, whether it's financially, you know, a project, you know, anything that speaks to that. And I think that's a beautiful indication of that meaning. Next up, we have the Two of Coins. And this is Gandalf the White balances his tasks. It's interesting. So Gandalf the White, he's a bit of a busy bee, isn't he, in this story? He's got a lot going on, a lot of people trying to kind of draw upon his knowledge, and he keeps having to show up left, right and centre to kind of save the day and help people, right? He disappears here, disappears there. I'll be back on the 5th day, or as he says. The sun rises when everything's, you know, going tits up for them in the Battle of Helm's Deep, but he comes, you know. But that definitely speaks to that sort of needing to balance out your priorities, and I like that. It's quite a funny one as well, actually, to have Gandalf there, and he manages to do it, you know, but he does have to prioritize, and he does have to kind of enable he does have to enlist some help, okay? But he is a busy bee, he's going everywhere, right? I like that. Okay, the Three of Coins, of course. We had to have some dwarf energy turn up in this deck a bit more, right? These are obviously dwarven miners. Dwarven? Is that a word? And in this image, they're actually mining for mithril. And it's that Three of Coins. It's actually quite a hard material to find. That's why it's so rare. As you can see, they're going so deep, and it takes a lot of teamwork, and that's what the Three of Coins speaks to, you know, that teamwork. You know, when the dwarfs come together, they really do, you know, they're unmatched with their sort of engineering prowess, their hard work, you know, their ability to mine, you know, and to get these precious kind of stones and elements out of the earth. And I think that's really speaks to the Three of Coins, that teamwork there. And it's a nice nod to the sort of earthy elements, you know, using the dwarfs, you know, for our pentacles here. I like that. Okay, the Four of Coins. You couldn't have anything other than this, right? That coveting energy. It has to be Gollum with the ring. And I love it. It's such this sinister, you know, when he's in his cave, you know, almost like in the Hobbit when he's doing the riddles with Bilbo there. Yeah. That coveting energy, you know, speaks to that sort of very kind of dark side of that, you know, that we have to be aware of. Why are you hoarding this to yourself? You know, look what it's done to him. He's obviously on the extreme end of being a sort of, you know, coveter there with the ring. It's completely kind of driven him mad, and it kind of mutated him so much that he's blinded to everything else. And I think we need to have those wake-up calls when we draw the Four of Coins sometimes. We do. You need to have those sort of prompts to say, okay, what am I holding on to too much? How is this serving me? Is it helping me? You know, have I become isolated in this pursuit? You know, he's all alone. Is it worth that? You know, being this sort of on this island alone, but having these sort of things you've hoarded. Maybe not. Question that. I like that as him. Very good choice. Here we have the 5 of coins, back to our best friend King Theoden. Very interesting 5 of coins that we've chosen. This is when he's actually being cursed and manipulated by Grimmer Wormtongue and is not himself. He's left out in the cold in a way because, again, like, he's not himself. It's a really interesting take on the 5 of coins, this actually, because usually we think of it as, you know, kind of, like I said, not having everything available to us, in the Rider-Waite-Smith, that sort of leper energy, not being allowed in. But here it's more speaking to, you know, him not being able to do things to the best of his ability anymore because he has been corrupted and cursed, you know, he's been made ill. And I think that's a really interesting take on the 5 of coins, actually. Something a bit new. Yeah, so I like that. 6 of coins. I love how much Gimli is like enthralled by Galadriel, especially in the films. Those scenes are so funny to me, especially the cut scenes. I think there might be a scene that's only in the extended version, but yeah. This is where Galadriel presents her gifts to the Fellowship. And of course we're picking the funny one where he merely asks for 3 strands of her hair because she's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen, an angel, and he's just so kind of enthralled by that. And I think that speaks a lot to the 6 of coins, that sort of giving kind of energy. Again, it's like sometimes the 6 of coins speaks to that giving, you know, but it not always being reciprocal, which is true even in this case here, but it's not like in a bad way, you know. She is giving, she's giving out, and there's not much they can give back to her, but that's okay. And she is also doing it for her own kind of wants and needs, you know. She wants to ensure that Middle-earth doesn't fall to Sauron, so you could kind of speak to that energy too with the 6 of coins, that's sort of doing something, you know, for something in return. But yeah, I like that. I like the giving energy of that card. Right, we have here the 7 of coins now, and this is Sam tending to the garden in Hobbiton. I like this. It's a nice kind of, you know, throwback to the lighter kind of elements of this story, you know, back before all the darkness and the troubles, or, you know, after, when Sam has managed to kind of rebuild his life after the adventure, and he's kind of in the garden awaiting his crops, able to kind of embrace that slow pace of life again. And that's what the 7 of coins is all about, right? It's kind of waiting for you kind of shits to come in. And here it's got that nice energy, you know, to kind of encourage us, like, yes, you know, we're doing the gardening, that is kind of hard work, but it's going to pay off for us, you know. We're going to get our blossoms, we're going to get our blooms. Look at everything Sam's been through, and he can still be optimistic, you know, so can we. And I like that. I appreciate that. It speaks to that energy very well. Okay, the 8 of coins here is we have the jewelsmiths, guided by Anatar, create rings until they can successfully forge rings of power. Okay, so this is something that's more nod to the story, the book, should I say, rather than the films. It takes a lot of work to make a ring of power, hence the 8 of coins. You know, these are master kind of elvish kind of smiths, and they are not able to do it, you know, for many kind of years and through many kind of attempts, right? So they just keep trying. And that's what the 8 of coins is about, is keep trying, keep honing your craft. That is how the elves become, you know, the best at what they do. And the dwarfs, arguably, in this. And granted, they have a longer lifespan, so they have a longer time to do so. But, you know, we also have that available to us in some way, shape or form, if we're willing to start and put that kind of work in. I like that. It really speaks to the 8 of coins energy. Okay, 9 of coins. This is where we have Sam going back to his kind of wife and having his children once the adventure is over. And the 9 of coins is about that sort of being content, isn't it? You know, this is Sam, like, he's okay coming back to this now. You know, for some it might not be enough. Like, you know, Frodo, unfortunately, you know, for him, or fortunately, you know, it doesn't have to be unfortunately, he doesn't want to come back to the Shire like this. He's gone through too much, and it probably be a lot, you know, it's a lot for him to adapt to. He doesn't, you know, he can't do it. But for Sam, he's happy to do that. He's happy to, you know, settle for that 9 of coins, to be kind of content here. There's nothing wrong with that. Content in that family situation, content in his kind of place of birth. And some people get the 9 of coins and you know, we think, oh, but I can always get the 10 of coins, you know, and don't see it like in a positive light. But I feel like sometimes we should be happy with where we're at and what we've gone through and what we've managed to build. And it's okay to be like, I'm settled here, I'm happy, you know, and I like that. We have Sam to highlight that. Right, here we have the 10 of coins, and this is a really interesting, because it seems like quite a dark card for the 10 of coins, right? Usually we expect lots of kind of happy colours, I would like to say. But what this speaks to is an incredibly happy moment, really and truthfully, a triumphant moment within the story. This is when Sauron's tower falls, because Frodo and Sam have been successful in their kind of journey to rid us of that ring. And the armies, you know, being so brave as they have been, are still standing strong, willing to do that kind of last fight. But here they're realizing, oh wow, we don't have to fight anymore, it's done. And how, you know, that's it. It's sanctuary, it's safety, it's victory. And like, that's what the 10 of coins speaks to a lot of the time, you know. Us getting what we wanted out of life, you know. Getting that peace, getting, you know, all the hard work we've put into something, all of this fighting they've done to get, you know, what they want, it's come to fruition now in the most, you know, poignant of ways, because this is something that attests to their own personal freedoms and ability to live life the way they like, the way they would want to. So I really like that. That's the image with the 10 of coins. Next we have the Page of Coins, which is really interesting. It's quite a funny one. This is Smeagol and Deagol as they seek their material fortunes. So this is quite a cute little kind of scene, really, isn't it? This is when these two are out fishing, trying to find, you know, little bits and bobs, or saying, oh, how are we going to kind of make our business work? You know, that's what the Page of Coins is all about. Starting off, like trying to, you know, wanting to study, wanting to start learning a craft, wanting to kind of start a business, things of this nature, brainstorming, you know, that really speaks to that Page of Pentacles, Page of Coins energy for me. And this is what these two are doing, you know, try and come up with all their plans, like, you know, to try and create them that solid future, trying to kind of create those opportunities for themselves. And, you know, they end up finding a ring, and of course it sets them off on a completely different path, a bit of a shortened one for Deagol, but yeah, very interesting Page of Coins here. Next we have the Knight of Coins. Very interesting pick again. This is Farmer Maggot tends to his turnips. Now he's a character that's sort of overlooked within the films, but, you know, he is a farmer. What is he doing? You know, this is the farmer that Merry and Pippin keep stealing from. And you can imagine he's kind of being so annoyed because, you know, with that Knight of Coins, Knight of Pentacles energy, that slow, hard-working, plodding along energy really does speak to that farmer kind of, you know, character, doesn't it? He's willing to put the work in to grow these turnips, you know. He's so enthralled with these turnips and making them the best crop he can have. And they keep getting nicked by the bloody hobbits, don't they? But yeah, I like that. That slow plodding along energy is definitely shown here. But I really like that we see the way that the crops are laid out. You know, the Knight of Coins is not someone without direction, and I like that we have the leading lines in this card to show that too. So that speaks to it. It might be slow, but he's going somewhere. Right, the Queen of Coins. This right here is Goldberry. Now again, a character that we do not see within the films. Obviously Peter Jackson and Fran, oh my goodness, I forgot her name. She's a great screenwriter. To be able to adapt this story into a film in the first place was no mean feat, and obviously that meant a lot of characters had to be cut. And I think a few people were kind of upset about the next two, particularly the King of Coins who's coming up. But here we have Goldberry. She's Tom Bombadil's wife within the story. Again, we have this with the court cards, these characters that are sort of meant to be counterparts, and in some ways may fall a little bit short of the kind of descriptions of the characters in the court cards that they're meant to be embodying. And just because, you know, not too much is known about her either, I have to be honest, much like our Queen of Cups, but she's thought to be kind of a river kind of spirit. she's very in touch with nature, so she does speak to that sort of earth sign element that I always associate with the Queen of Coins. You know, someone who can create houses from her lilies, as it said, you know, has a very big connection to nature, which I always see in the Queen of Pentacles. You know, I don't just see this sort of business kind of woman, a grounded woman. I see a person very in touch with nature, you know, very nurturing, almost like the Empress energy. We definitely get that from her, you know. She's definitely that sort of solid counterpart to Tom, and we see that within the story. So yeah, she does speak to the Queen of Coins, you know, especially with the earth kind of elements of her, the earthiness that she embodies. So, you know, and I actually like that they've incorporated the river here for her as well, because that is quite something, almost like she's coming out of it, like part of it. That's really cool, because that is something she's associated with. So I like that. I like it, but it's not the most easiest court card, I have to be honest. That is something with this deck, so bear that in mind. You might have to do a little bit of research into some of these characters. Next up, we have Tom Bombadil himself, the King of Coins. I think a very good kind of pick for the King of Coins, don't you agree? Unfortunately, he was cut out from the films, which is a shame, because he is such an endearing and great character by Tolkien. He's arguably one of the most powerful characters in the whole of the Lord of the Rings, and one of the most ancient, although that is sort of debated. You know, he's a jolly character, you know, he's very secure, you know, he speaks to that security of the King of Coins, you know, to be such a powerful being, but kind of unaffected by what's going on. And I think in many ways, again with he's a character that's been chosen in this deck because he speaks to the sort of element that we kind of associate pentacles and coins with, the earth. Okay, he's a very earthy kind of character, and I can kind of see why you pick him as King of Pentacles. I don't think it's like straightforward really, but he is, like, you know, he said he's the master of wood, water and hill, so he definitely has that about him. You know, he's definitely elevated status. He is that kind of king there, and definitely with that earth energy about him. You know, he speaks to that king energy of kind of being unaffected sometimes. And a King of Pentacles or King of Coins can be, you know, if he's got everything, which, you know, Tom is an ancient being. It's kind of got what he wants in his lands, and, you know, doesn't really want to concern himself. You know, he tosses the ring up in the air when he's given it as if it's nothing really. And when he sort of proposes being the person who could be a guardian, because he is also unaffected by the ring, mostly because of him being a sort of ancient magical being, you know, Gandalf says no, and it's not because he believes he'll be corrupted, but because he thinks he'll feel it so unimportant himself that he'll simply misplace it. So he does speak to that sort of kind of loftiness of a king sometimes, you know, that King of Pentacles, I've got everything I've wanted, you know, maybe on the more kind of, you know, darker aspect of a King of Pentacles, but nonetheless, you know, he's definitely got all the good traits there too. Might be a bit of a reach in certain aspects, but yeah, you guys let me know. This card is definitely one that deserves and warrants more study for me, you know, and him as a character, getting back familiar with him. But yeah, he is a very, very good character. Yeah. Next up, we have the Ace of Staves. And what better way to illustrate this than Gandalf's staff, you know? I like that we have staves and we're using the wizard staffs here. You know, what is the Ace of Staves or the Ace of Wands all about? You know, it's about sort of that passion, that kind of opportunity. And what does Gandalf represent? That's what he represents when he shows up with his staff, right? Guys, I'm taking you on an adventure. Let's go. You're not meant to be sitting in the Shire. So I like that we've got that association to Gandalf again, with that there in the ace, and his hand there holding it, giving you the opportunity. And we can see, I don't know if you can see, there's like hobbit in there. It's like he's like, I have arrived. Let's go on an adventure, guys. So that definitely speaks to the Ace of Staves and Wands there. Here we have the Two of Wands. And I really like this. We have the staffs yet again. Very simple, almost pippish kind of design now, right, guys? We have the two wands. We have the wand of staff of Sauron, the staff of Gandalf, crossing, you know, really speaking to that sort of Two of Wands energy of what path are we going to choose? Like, who's, you know, decisions to be made, okay? Where are we going to go with this? you know, two kind of opposing forces sometimes when we're in that sort of two of wands kind of state, like trying to make our plans. Where do we go here? Who do we follow? Where do we put our eggs? You know, what basket? And I think that's really interesting that we have these two kind of showing that, you know, and we're seeing that two of wands energy as a conflict, because, you know, the two of wands is that sort of waiting, trying to galvanize, trying to make a choice as well. You know, twos a lot of the time speak to choice for me, and I like that, because you're not yet stepped into that three of wands and made that choice and set off on that expansion, set off on that journey. So that's really cool. Very interesting take on it. Okay, so for the three of staves, three of wands, we actually have this scene where Gandalf awaits rescue. You know, this is when he's been taken hostage by Sauron and kind of been beaten up quite badly, and he's awaiting, you know, the eagles to come and get him. You know, he's got his little moth messenger there. You know, the three of staves, the three of wands, like represents like freedom, adventure, like travel. And obviously here we have Gandalf kind of stuck, yes, but we, you know, if we know what's to come, he's actually not stuck. You know, he's actually made, you know, his plans. He's already sent a message to facilitate himself being freed. You know, he's made those plans. You know, he's had that foresight, he's had that forward planning, and that's what the three of wands speaks to. You know, moving forward, that expansion, and he's going to get off this tower. We know that. And I like that. It's that encouragement. It's like that moment before, you know, when we get the three of wands, you know, I feel it's really cool that we have this scene that's kind of just the moment before he's kind of freed, you know, that sort of excitement, like, yes, your forward planning is going to pay off. Have that encouragement, you know, you're on the right path, don't worry, things are going to get moving. I like that. Okay, next up we have the four of staves, the four of wands. This is so cool. So this is the fellowship is formed, you know, and that does speak to that four of wands energy, doesn't it? You know, that sort of point we get to, like, cool, this is it, we've made our squad. We've got to that sort of what's the word, we've got to that goal, we've got to that kind of resting point potentially, you know, to kind of, you know, be the kick on for the next kind of phase of our adventure. And this is so key, you know, forming the fellowship is what enables every character in this kind of story to move forward. You know, it is an incredibly poignant moment, and it does speak to that four of wands energy, you know, speak to that celebration, that coming together, which the four of wands can speak of. You know, yes, it can speak of marriage, but this is almost like a kind of, you know, like I said, a fellowship. It's a bond, right? It's a bond amongst brothers here, you know, that they all have decided we're going to have each other's back to have this shared vision and shared mission. And I think that really does speak to the four of wands energy. Next we have the five of staves, rather, the five of wands. What a great kind of depiction here. This is where Isildur denies Elrond's call to throw the ring into the fire. You know, we have Elrond there just shouting, Isildur, you know, in the films. And it really speaks to that kind of conflict of the five of wands, that kind of having opposing forces competing, you know. Elrond's trying to kind of put his point and case across, like, please get rid of it, nothing good's going to come from it. But, you know, Isildur's having none of that. He's like, no, the power promised to me, I'm not going to just chuck it away, it'd be wasteful. And they're in conflict, you know, and that's what the five of wands stands for, you know, a lot of conflict, a lot of competition. And it's a very poignant scene, and it changes things, you know. When we are in conflict like this, it can be very profound. You know, these were best friends, people who had fought side by side, you know, many times. You know, someone, you know, a very close bond, you know, they'd seen a defeat through together, and this is almost a betrayal there for Elrond, you know. It's a betrayal for him, you know, broke his heart. You can see how much it affects him down the line in regards to him not being sure, like, about men, and being sure about Aragorn's ability, you know, because of this disappointment and betrayal through conflict. And the five of wands definitely speaks to that energy, so that's really, really good depiction. Here we have the six of wands. I really like this. This is the coronation and celebration of Aragorn becoming the king that he was always meant to be. What better card for kind of victory and celebration? Yes, we could have chose something different in this story too, like a battle victory, maybe when, we won the Battle of Helm's Deep, maybe. But I just think this is just a more beautiful, kind of restful, kind of, the end of the journey kind of victory, the big battle has been won. And it's nice to kind of remember that when we see the Six of Wands in our readings, not to always have that anxiety hanging over us, like, well, but what next? Of course he has to build, but, take it, reside in our successes, reside in these victories, take the adoration, relish it. Now we have the Seven of Staves, or the Seven of Wands. This is interesting. This is how the 4 brave hobbits stand taller than anyone thought a hobbit could. I find this really interesting that this is the Seven of Staves, or the Seven of Wands. As you can see here, we've got the boys, the boys are back in town. This is like after everything, and they've come back from their adventures, and everyone bows down to them. This is the hobbits who are so used to looking up at everyone. It's quite bewildering for them. I think it's actually quite overwhelming for them, especially with everything they've been through. And the Seven of Wands speaks to that kind of energy of kind of protecting yourself where you're at, having those kind of boundaries. So this is a very interesting card and scene to use for that. It's about standing your ground, and having that confidence now, to be seen that, and that's what they're being seen. They're not just these little beings to be overlooked. They're kind of getting that recognition. It's a nod to kind of standing in that strength now and owning it. And I like that, because the Seven of Wands can sometimes really kind of speak to haters, having to defend yourself still, But here, it's a slightly different energy. It's actually, standing tall in the strength of that Seven of Wands, like knowing you deserve your place here. And that's a really interesting take on it. I do like that. Definitely offers something different. Okay, next we have the Eight of Staves, or Eight of Wands, and this is the spears of the Riders of Rohan, some of the best kind of spear throwing kind of fighters within the whole kind of realm of Middle Earth. Definitely speaks to that quick energy here. Very simple, very rider weight, very pippish, but it gets the job done. Okay, that is what it's all about, that fast sort of, swift kind of action which the Riders of Rohan's take, that kind of harsh and swift communication style, especially of Hermit sometimes, that sort of rushing of the horses, all speak to that sort of fast energy of the Eight of Wands, should I say. So yeah, very self-explanatory there. We have the Knight of Wands here, the Nine of Staves, and this speaks to this is a weary army before the battle. This is where, Aragorn, I feel, is trying to give a talk and say, yes, we're tired. Yes, this is probably going to be the last stand, but if it's going to be the last stand, we're going to make it a moment to remember, when them true leaders really have to work up the courage to get their men behind them, and that is, if that's not Nine of Wands energy, I don't know what is, that's when we're tired. We've been carrying these wands on our back, these burdens. How many battles have we fought at this point? How many battles have this army fought at this point? And this is it. This is the ultimate kind of battle now for your life. But you've got to take it, right? That's what the Nine of Wands is like. Keep going. We have to keep going. I know you're tired, I know you might want to give up. I know we've been through a lot of battles, but we've got to keep it going. We've come this far. And that's exactly what this battle is about, It's about that fortitude, that sort of courage to keep going. And so that definitely speaks to the energy very well. Oh, I love this. This is the Ten of Wands, and this is Sam carrying Frodo on his back, refusing to rest until the quest is complete. Again, just a kind of, the Ten of Wands is just that extra kind of add-on from the Nine of Wands. It's all the burdens we've had, everything we've been through, it's getting too much now. We really don't have the strength to go forward. And yet, here we have Sam, the man that never gave up, the most loyalist friend, who would take Frodo on his own back to get him there. I might not be able to carry it for you, Mr. Frodo, but I can surely carry you. And that's what he does. You know, and that's what we have to do when we get to that Tens of Wands. We have to remember this is completion, this is end. It's the last push, the last leg, literally, even if we are on our last legs. And I think this is a beautiful scene to depict that and give us encouragement when we see it in this card. Like, okay, if Sam can do it, we can do it. He's been through a lot, right? So I love that. It definitely speaks to that Ten of Wands energy for me. Here we have the Page of Wands or Page of Staves. And this is Arwen, you know, trying to fight her case, to fight the battle, but unfortunately she is denied by her uncle, King Theoden. This is really interesting to have that Page of Wands energy within her, because it shows that sort of willingness and that passion to kind of go forward, you know, to speak her mind, you know. That's what I get a lot with a Page of Wands kind of messenger energy. Someone that speaks their mind's not afraid to, despite what the outcome may be. And, you know, she is rejected here right now, but she's still willing to push forward. And that speaks to a lot of the enthusiasm and the guile and the sort of kind of that passion and that heart that, you know, the Suit of Wands speaks to a lot, and definitely the Page of Wands speaks to. I like that, and she's creative with it in the end, because I always see that as, you know, the Wands is a very creative suit, and the Page of Wands is a very creative kind of individual, because she manages to kind of find her way and get to what she wants to do, you know, through her own sort of tenacity and kind of creativity, you know, to kind of hide herself. And I like that. I think she's a good pick for that. The Knight of Wands. This is so funny. This is Gimli and Legolas approach the riders of Rohan with hostility. This is such fiery energy, right? I love this stand-up. It's hilarious, you know. When the bromance is becoming strong and they'll say, you know, he says, I will cut your head off where you stand, dwarf, and kind of mocks Gimli's height, and Legolas is like, yo, that's my bro, okay? And I will shoot you before you have a chance for his head to hit the ground, you know, for the sword to swing, basically, Legolas says. And Knight of Wands, that really speaks to that hasty energy, and there's a lot of fiery energy within this scene. Like we said, we have Éomer, very fiery person. Legolas and Gimli both can be quite fiery, quite abrupt people too. We have the spear coming this way, the arrow this way. And that's what the Knight of Wands can be, a bit of a rash, a bit of a hasty kind of character when they pop up in readings. This is definitely speaking to that energy, that very egotistical, like very kind of fiery masculine energy that needs to be curbed sometimes, or needs to be kind of bear in mind, you know. But also can get things done, you know. At least it kind of meant that these three ended up respecting each other in the end, because they could see, you know, the kind of conviction in each other, and that's important, right? And Knights of Wands definitely have that about them, but they, you know, it's definitely that nod to be careful of that rash energy. So I like that. So here we have the Queen of Staves, the Queen of Wands. This is another person that doesn't really appear in the film at all. This is Luthien. Again, we're going to have some king and queen counterparts here. Now, if you're not familiar with these characters, I definitely suggest, you know, and you're interested in getting this deck, you know, to read up about them and read the stories again. You know, it's Tolkien's reading kind of day to day. Why not? She definitely speaks the Queen of Wands. She's known as one of the most beautiful creatures to ever exist, you know. That's how she's described. She's a performer, a dancer, is meant to have one of the most beautiful voices, and I always think of that when I think of Queen of Wands, you know, this performer, this sort of beautiful kind of confident being. And we can even see it in her hair, you know, with her beautiful long raven hair dancing in the forests. She's also meant to be, you know, her love story is meant to be sung through the ages, you know, her love story of Beren, who we're going to have next as the queen, as the king of Wands. She is like one of the elves, and we know about her character that this is what she was, this dancer, this kind of, you know, tenacious person that fought for her love and kept going. That is a very Queen of Wands, you know, very passionate person. You know, that performing kind of person, beauty, confidence, you know, alluring, attractive. And you know, interested in the arts. I always see that, you know, I see a kind of Leo woman in her, and that always, you know, Leos speak to that to me, especially Leo women. So yeah, she does. She definitely embodies that, and definitely look into her and her backstory more, because it can give you a better understanding of the court cards with this deck. And here we have her love. This is Beren. He is the king of wands, the most passionate of all our kings, I want to say, the most fiery, the most generous, and other kind of Leo energy, I would want to say. I always see the king of wands as a Leo, and a Leo man kind of having all those sort of attributes, you know, that sort of loyalty, that sort of generosity, that big heart, the passion, the romance. And he definitely has that with his queen, or with his wife, Luthien. He had to have that gravitas and that sort of romantic element about him, because, you know, theirs was the first union between a kind of a mortal elf and a mortal. He was a man and he wooed her, and they had this whole love story, you know, where he even passed away, and she had a choice, you know, you can either dwell, you know, as the ever-living elf, or come back and live a mortal life with him once again, and that's what she chose, which really speaks to the romantic element of both the king and queen of wands, I think. What a wonderful story. So yeah, he definitely has that gravitas about him, and so that really speaks to the king of wands, I feel, you know, that tenacity, that sort of sticking to his guns, you know, this is the person I love, and I'm going to just keep going for her, even if it's cost me my life at one point. You know, this is a mortal man who is a hero in and of himself, you know, with such kind of vim and tenacity that he kind of undertook, you know, what was meant to be an impossible task set for him, you know, as a kind of way to make sure he was disallowed from marrying his love. He took it upon himself, this quest, and achieved it, you know. And that speaks to the tenacity of the king of wands, that kind of unwillingness to give up, you know, that passion, that guile, that movement, you know, that the wands really speak to. So yeah, he's a great character. Okay, next up we have the Ace of Swords. And this is Aragorn's sword, you know, when it's reforged, you know, a new opportunity. What does this sword represent when it gets reforged? This is your destiny, your path now, okay, a new shot at it, you know, because you've kind of let that sword lay in pieces for ages and not really taken on your fate or your destiny. But now here's the opportunity, you know, when Elrond hands it to him, here, I believe in you, you know. It's almost like the truth has been revealed as well, which the Ace of Swords can speak to, that sort of revealing of truths. This is your true path, okay? Stay true to it. Don't ignore it now, okay? And I believe in you. That sort of, that belief that comes with the kind of Ace of Swords, like you can do this, you know, take this opportunity. This is when Elrond actually shows that I believe you can do this. It's really important, you know. It's important that we have those sort of eureka moments when we see these cards. Here we have the Two of Swords, and this is, you know, perfect. You know, this is when Arwen is kind of trying to make that choice, that really hard choice. Who do I choose? Like leaving the Middle Earth with my family and my father, who I love, you know, dearly, and my people who I love dearly, or staying because the love of my life in the form of Aragorn is here, and he's kind of embarking, you know, on one of the kind of most futile kind of quests of his life. You know, she's having to make that choice, and it's a difficult one. And the Two of Swords, you know, it can speak to those kind of difficult choices sometimes. I think sometimes we gloss over that and say, you know, oh no, you know, all you have to do is kind of choose one path. But sometimes it's difficult. It's difficult, you know. But it does speak to that. I feel in our deep intuitions in our hearts, we do know that Two of Swords card, where we really want to go. And Arwen speaks to that, because she knows, you know, where her heart belongs. It belonged with Aragorn and the family she was going to make. And she sort of already made that choice a lot of the time down the line when she gave him, you know, that necklace and kind of and kept, you know, lingering on. So yeah, that definitely speaks to that. Three of Swords. This card. Oh my goodness. I think this is such a poignant depiction of the Three of Swords. You know, this is when Gimli has discovered, you know, that all of his kin have been, you know, murdered by goblins and orcs. Within Khazad-dûm, his you know, he was expecting to see all of his kin, and unfortunately they've all died, and he's grieving. And that Three of Swords here, I really love that. It's like this, rather than the swords being in the heart, they're put down. It's like, oh, I give up, I've had enough, you know, how consuming grief can be. And it's shining a light on that and on him, you know, that despair, you know, that the Three of Swords can speak to, that grief, that sort of, I can't carry on, you know, I don't want to pick up my sword and keep going anymore. I can't do this. And I like that. It's such a strong card that sort of doesn't gloss over how painful a Three of Swords moment can be for us. You know, sometimes it can be as, you know, poignant as an actual physical loss of someone or something important to us. And it speaks very well to that. I like that. And it's something different than having like hearts and swords. And that's very good. I like that in my collection. Four of Swords. This is a beautiful Four of Swords as well. It really is. I think this is such a good depiction. This is where Aragorn lets the army of dead lay to rest. You know, what is Four of Swords about is rest now. You know, we often see a person sort of laying down in a sort of almost like coffin-like pose, you know, with the swords there. Taking that pause, taking that time for healing, and this is the ultimate kind of laying to rest. He's telling these people, you've fulfilled your pledge now, I'm letting you go, I'm letting you go now. You know, you can live in eternal peace now because you've been in such unrest for all this time where you've been cursed and had to carry on as the army of the dead. Now you've fulfilled your promise, I let you go. And that's beautiful. I think what an interesting depiction of the card. So poignant. I just think it really tells us, you know, we need this time to rest now. What have we been holding on to for so long? Like, what has been causing us such unrest? Take that healing time. The ultimate heal. He's healed the ultimate wound here, you know, that inability to cross over. Beautiful. Here we have the Five of Swords, and this is the dead marshes sustain the remains of a bitter battle. Really interesting this, because the Five of Swords speaks to conflict, walking away from conflict, but at what cost, and what speaks to that in this story more than the marshes, you know, of the dead. Look at all that loss, you know, when Gollum's taking them through and telling them, you know, these are all the people that have fought the battles and lost, like this is the cost of that. They're still here today haunting these marshes. And that's what we need to ask ourselves, these questions, when the Five of Swords comes up. Like, is this conflict worth it? You know, what was gained from this? You know, maybe they won this battle. You know, this is where they kind of made their last stand against Sauron before, but to what? To what end? You know, they're all still here haunting the place. And losses and conflict, they do haunt us. And that's something we should, you know, reflect on. Unless we're dragged into the depths of it time and again and into more conflict. That's what I like about this card. So yeah. Six of Swords now. This is interesting. This is when Merry and Pippin find safe passage and atop the Ents. That's how it's described. So yeah, Six of Swords is that moving forward, you know, kind of moving on, and this is where they found that safety. They're moving on with Treebeard. They've got out of the sort of jeopardy of being captured by the orcs and then kind of running around aimlessly in the forest of Angorn, you know, with trees trying to kill them at every possible moment. And they found that safety in that passage, you know, with Treebeard. I think that's really cool, and I like that it's that slowing down of energy as well with the Six of Swords. Sometimes it speaks of that movement, but it always speaks of movement forward to me like in a calm way. You know, it's not that fast Eight of Wands movement or that Chariot movement. It's like, okay, we're moving forward, but we're doing it, you know, in a calm, healing way. And I like that because we need that sometimes. Here we have the Seven of Swords, and you know, you couldn't have a better person to kind of depict that slyness, that sort of, you know, treachery and deception. You know, it had to be Grimmer Wormtongue, didn't it? Look, he's stealing two swords here from the Seven Swords, and And he was stealing the life force of King Theoden, poisoning his mind, allowing his lands to be overrun by orcs, you know, as he worked for Saruman. A very sly person who was once a very loyal person, you know, and it's painful because the Seven of Swords does speak to that, you know, it does speak to that energy of having that around us. So yeah, I like that. I think it depicts it very, very well. Next up, we have the Eight of Swords. And this is Frodo is tested at Mount Doom. So this is when, again, we're almost having a Isildur moment 2.0. Frodo has got to the kind of the edge of Mount Doom and is, you know, being told, you know, chuck it in by Sam, chuck the ring in there. Come on, we've come all this way now. We just need to get rid of it. But with that Eight of Swords moment there, he can't make that choice, you know. That's what the Eight of Swords is about, that sort of paralysis, like not being able to make a choice and move forward. He's just standing on the precipice there. He's in his head too much again now. He's starting to believe the kind of lies of the ring, like when crunch times happen, can we do what we need to do, or are we going to get stifled by the thoughts that we tell ourselves? You know, that's what the Eight of Swords speaks to, and I think this scene speaks to it very well. You know, that hesitation, but we need to be careful if we hesitate for too long, because we might miss an opportunity and we might, you know, start regressing. And he almost does that, doesn't he? You know, really and truthfully, if it's not for Gollum, who knows what might have happened. But luckily for us and for the good of Middle Earth, that never happened. But the Eight of Swords can be a very poisonous energy, a very insidious energy that we have to be aware of, I think. And be aware of that it's within our own control, and it's like mind over matter, like realizing that these, you know, we like with the Rider-Waite, you can undo that kind of blindfold and keep and tie your hands and keep moving. You know, there's nothing keeping you here but yourself. So yeah, I like that. And next we have the Nine of Swords, and this is Denethor's pride and despair drive him to madness. Yeah. Nine of Swords, what can I say about this? This is where he is literally about to burn his own son alive. And the Nine of Swords really does speak to that energy of just not being in a good place. Usually it's sleepless nights, and he does seem very sleep deprived in this. He's a very panicked, kind of weary person who cannot deal with the loss that he's been going through. And he's just not acting rationally. It speaks to that sort of feeling of insomnia, you know, when you can't function properly, which is a nice kind of take on the Nine of Swords, that unrest that we feel. And that's exactly the sort of energy that this scene depicts. You know, he's crazed. He's about to do something really, really bad, and no one can get through to him. And that's what the Nine of Swords energy speaks to. It's a very overwhelming energy of panic, despair, depression, and literally this is what we're seeing here. So it definitely speaks to that, you know, in a kind of different way, but albeit, you know, gets that point across. And next up we have the Ten of Swords, a beautiful moment where the ring is destroyed, the war is won, but not without great loss. And I think that is quite an interesting kind of take. You know, the Ten of Swords is the end, but usually, like we see in the Rider-Waite Smith, there is someone, you know, dead with swords in their back. It is an ending, and that's something we need to, you know, acknowledge with the Ten of Swords when it pops up for us in our lives and in our readings. It's okay to kind of feel tired and worn out by this. You know, maybe this has come to an end. Maybe we feel good about that. Maybe we don't. Maybe we have mixed feelings, but it is an ending. And that is what has to be accepted. And that's what we see with the ring melting here. Even the ring itself has to accept that. You know, that's it. Your time is up. You know, on to the next. And endings, yeah, I think they bring up a lot of mixed feelings for us, you know. Like we see with the characters in this film, even though, you know, Frodo, you know, they were successful, you know, it haunts them, you know. Kind of moving on to that next phase for him. He can't move on and go back to what he once was. He can't live in the Shire again. And that happens with us a lot when we meet these endings, and especially a Ten of Swords endings. We know there's no going back now. And there is a sadness about that has to be acknowledged, even though, you know, we may be going on to bigger and better things. And I like that. I like that this is the card that's been chosen for that. So next up, we have the Page of Swords, and I really like this because it speaks to that messenger energy in the Page of Swords, you know. We're kind of very like, yes, we're going to get our message across in whichever way, shape or form we can. And this is where, you know, we're warning, you know, these are the beacons that are warning Gondor to call, you know, they're calling for aid, like, come and help us, like, light the beacons, you know, and Gandalf is getting Pippin to help him with this endeavour, you know, call them to our aid, you know, they will come. And that is what the Page of Swords about, is setting off on these new adventures, right? Kind of trying to get this communication across, you know, willing to take that shot, you know, and do so. I like that, and I like that this really speaks to that energy, you know, wanting to expand. I always see like a Page of Swords, someone that's wanting to travel. We get that sort of element, like this message is traveling, like, you know, across many, many mountains and lands. And the Page of Swords is someone that wants to expand their horizon, wants to reach out, you know. I like that. It's a really interesting take on it. I like the communication element there, you know, with, you know, swords attributed to air, you know, and that's all about communication. Next up, we have the Knight of Swords, and this is the Uruks of Saruman. Unwavering and unquestioning soldiers, okay, and this speaks to that Knight of Swords, swift energy. We're just gonna kill you, and we're not gonna ask questions because that is what we are made to do. And the Knight of Swords can be very abrupt. He is the fastest knight out of them all, doesn't always think about what he's doing. And the Uruks are quite unthinking, they're not made to think, you know, even though this is the suit or thinking, you know, with the swords. Not here, not with the knight. He sort of just goes in very narrow kind of sight or vision. And that's, the Urukai speak so much to that. You know, they have, you know, this is where we're going, this is our purpose, this is what we're meant to be doing, and we're going to do it, and we're not going to ask questions. And we have to be aware of this energy when it presents itself to us, you know, be honest with ourselves about it. And this is quite a confronting character to help us do that. I like that. It's not just your typical guy riding really fast on a horse. This is the guy who's coming to kill you, and he's not going to kind of care much about your thoughts on that. So yeah, it's a kind of nod to us to be aware of our words as well, and the way we can be maybe harsh with what we say sometimes, not unthinking, because, you know, they are also like that. So I like that. Next we have the Queen of Swords. And who is this going to be but Galadriel herself? Interesting, isn't it? But I do actually see why they've chosen her as the Queen of Swords, actually, because she is, again, one of the strongest kind of females characters within this story. Incredibly wise, you know, so many people come out to seek her counsel, but she can also be quite stoic, quite stern, and quite sharp with her tongue at times. You know, she can be quite blunt. That speaks to the Queen of Swords energy, as well as being a sort of nurturer. You know, she does scare Frodo at certain points, you know, because she has that gravitas, she has that sort of, you know, kind of imposing energy about her, I would say. She's also a very truthful person, and I like that about her. Obviously someone who has a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge, has seen so many ages, you know. So she's a great pick for the Queen of Swords. Definitely speaks to that energy. And last but not least, we have her husband. This is Celeborn. He kind of only randomly pops up, isn't it, in the films, but if we know his character, the stories, and the book in particular, what we do know, and what we do know about his energy really does speak to the King of Swords, I feel. You know, he is known as one of the most wisest and benevolent kind of leaders of Middle-earth. You know, him and Galadriel, such a power couple, you know. He provides sanctuary for the Fellowship when they come. You know, he's someone, again, that's sought like for his counsel. He's known to be a very quick thinker, a kind of accomplished warrior. All these things really speak to the King of Swords, you know. He's a strategist, you know. He won very important battles, you know, especially like in the War of the Rings, and that just speaks to the King of Swords energy, doesn't it? He gets overlooked in the films. I think he kind of pops up a little, doesn't he? But, you know, in the books you'll get to know a lot more about his sort of history. You know, of course, Galadriel, she needs a kind of strong counterpart, right? And Celeborn is that, for sure. You know, that stoic energy, that kind of thinking energy that the King of Swords speaks to, that sort of being able to formulate plans, be that leader, you know, be kind of balanced in that. And yeah, that is where we end it, guys. That is the end of the deep dive into the Lord of the Rings deck. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it gave you some insights. Quite a long one. And if you are interested in getting the deck, I hope it gave you a little showcase of a lot of the cards and imagery, and helped you to kind of decide whether it's something you'd be interested in getting. So yeah, enjoy the International Tolkien Reading Day. Fun fact, it's actually chosen for the 25th of March because that is the given date from where for when Frodo destroyed the ring. So that's really cool. Definitely was fun to kind of read up on that. So yeah, get the Lord of the Rings out, crack it out. I think I'm going to start reading it again, and get the movies on if not, you know, or read some of these other stories. If The Hobbit is a good kind of starting point, or the Tales of Tom Bombadil, you know. He's got a lot of works to draw upon, you know. A very fascinating man, a very accomplished writer, very wise, you know, very poignant, you know, a person who really understood war and put that into his stories, understood love and family and friendship and the importance of it in life, and really depicted that really well throughout his work and his characters that he created and stories that he wove for us. So definitely give it a go if you haven't, or if you have, dive right back in. So yeah, thanks guys. If you enjoyed that and you'd like more deep dives, this was like my first one. I don't know how long this is going to be. I may have to edit it, but yeah, let me know what you like more of, what decks you would like deep dives for, and yeah, give it a like, thumbs up, comments. I'll be interested to hear what you think about the deck, and in your thoughts on some of the cards and picks. That would be really cool. And yeah, subscribe if you haven't already. We'd love to have you as part of the Treehouse. It's a growing community and it's just getting better by the day. So yeah, thank you for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.